I was 18 when my mother looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you won't go to med school, then don't ever call yourself a Blake again." The words hit harder than a slap. But what hurt most wasn't the disownment. It was the disgust. She said it with her arms crossed in the foyer of our Boston brownstone, my sister Alicia standing smugly beside her in a white coat she hadn't earned yet. My father said nothing, just stared at the ground. I was still holding my high school diploma, wrinkled from the rain, when they slammed the door in my face. They didn't even let me pack. I walked to the train station that night, suitcase half-zipped, and rode out of that privileged, sterile neighborhood like I was fleeing a war zone. The crime? I told them I didn't want to be a doctor. Not because I wasn't smart enough. I had the grades, the test scores, the internships. But I didn't want it. I didn't feel alive in white lab coats. I felt alive in code, in systems, in innovation. But in the Blake household, feelings didn't matter. You followed the path or you vanished from the family tree. And I vanished. If you're watching this, thank you for joining me. Folded hands. And if stories of redemption, purpose, and poetic revenge move you, please subscribe to support more powerful tales like this one. Your support keeps them alive. I moved to Seattle with $300, a used laptop, and one friend who let me sleep on her floor for 2 weeks. Her name was Marley. She worked at a wellness startup and introduced me to everything my family told me was beneath us. Freelancing, gig work, coding boot camps, ramen noodles, and dreams. I cleaned gyms during the day. I coded at night. There were moments I wanted to call home, especially in the winter when the lights flickered and I couldn't feel my fingers, but I remembered my mother's last words. This defect won't survive out there. Defect. That's what they called me. Because I didn't want to cut people open or play golf at fundraisers. But I wasn't trying to survive. I was trying to build something. 3 years in, I launched my first prototype. An AI-powered scheduling platform for small clinics. I called it CareMap. Simple. Fast. Designed by someone who knew firsthand how inefficient hospital systems really were. I posted about it on LinkedIn. Got 10 likes. Then 50. Then a DM from a VC partner asking if I could pitch the following week. CareMap raised its first $750,000 6 months later. I hired 2 people. Then 5. Then 20. By year 5, we were onboarding hospital systems in 6 states. By year 6, we passed $10 million in revenue. I still didn't have a desk, just a standing workstation and an old coffee mug with a chip in the handle. And I was happy. Really happy. Until I got a call from a lawyer representing the Blake Foundation Medical Center. Yes. My family's hospital. "Hello, Ms. Winters," he said. I'd legally dropped Blake. "I'm reaching out on behalf of the board. We're seeking permission to license a portion of your analytics dashboard software, CareMap's Smart Intake Module, for pilot testing in our ER." I blinked. "Excuse me. Blake Foundation Hospital. Boston. We're undergoing digitization. The Smart Intake Module fits our use case." They didn't even know it was me. The system I built out of rejection was now about to rescue the institution that kicked me out. I approved the license. Quietly. No red flags. No headlines. I wanted them to use it. I wanted it to work. Because what's more poetic than saving the people who swore you'd never matter? I thought that was the end. Until the invitation came. It was ivory and gold. Embossed with calligraphy. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Alicia Blake and Dr. Charles Hendricks." Alicia. My younger sister. The one who was always the favorite. The beauty. The future surgeon. She was getting married. In Boston. I wasn't invited directly, of course. It was a mistake. Probably a mail merge slip-up. But I smiled when I opened it. Because I knew this was my moment. 9 years had passed. I looked nothing like the defect they disowned. My hair was sleek now, jaw defined, skin glowing from stress-free success and clean nutrition. I wore tailored jumpsuits instead of baggy hoodies. I had a driver, not because I needed one, but because it saved time. And most importantly, I had peace. Not revenge. Peace. But that didn't mean I wasn't going to walk into that wedding and watch every jaw hit the floor. I flew into Boston 2 days before the ceremony and stayed in a luxury suite downtown. On the morning of the wedding, I dressed slowly. I wore a white pantsuit with a blush silk blouse. Classic. Feminine. Sharp. I didn't want to overshadow the bride. But I wasn't shrinking either. As I stepped into the Blake Estate's marble-lined foyer, I heard the first gasp. Aunt Rita. Then Cousin Meredith. They looked me up and down like I'd materialized from a magazine cover. Someone whispered, "Is that Alexandra?" The room paused. Then I heard it. My mother's voice. From the other side of the reception tent. "Why is this defect here?" I turned, letting the full weight of 9 years of exile burn off my skin like morning mist. Then I smiled. "I'm the reason your hospital didn't close," I said. She blinked. "What?" "You licensed my software 6 months ago. Smart Intake. CareMap. That's my company." Silence. My father turned. "What?" "I didn't come to disrupt," I said, voice calm. "I came because your daughter's getting married. And despite what you think of me, I still care about this family." More silence. Then Alicia stepped forward. Her wedding dress shimmered under the chandeliers. "I knew," she said quietly. Everyone turned. "I knew it was you the moment they said Smart Intake. I've been using it during my rotation. It's brilliant." I blinked. "I'm sorry," she added. "For not standing up back then. For letting them label you." My mother looked like someone had pulled the earth out from under her. My father sat down. For once, there were no defenses left. No white coats. No lectures. Just recognition. I didn't stay long. I gave Alicia a hug. I shook Charles's hand. And I left before dessert was served. Because the moment wasn't about revenge. It was about return. Not to reclaim their validation. But to prove I'd never needed it. I didn't cry after the wedding. I didn't rage either. I just sat in the back seat of my black SUV, staring at the moon through the tinted window as we pulled away from the estate that once felt like a prison. "You want to go somewhere?" my driver asked gently. "No," I replied. "Just keep driving." I needed time. Not to process what had just happened, but to remember what it took to get here. Because standing in front of my mother, looking her in the eye while her jaw trembled, didn't feel like revenge. It felt like closure. I spent the next morning at a quiet cafe in Beacon Hill. Almond latte. My tablet opened to a dashboard showing hospital usage metrics. Blake Foundation Hospital's intake speed had improved by 42% since CareMap launched. They were using me. Depending on me. And yet, no one had called to say thank you. Not even Alicia. But as I stared into my screen, lost in the spinning charts and color-coded KPIs, an email landed in my inbox. Subject line. From the other side of the hall. It was from Alicia. "I don't expect forgiveness. But I couldn't let you leave without this." She wrote that she'd always admired me. That I was brave for choosing a different path. That when I walked out of our house 9 years ago, she cried into her pillow all night but never dared to speak up. "Mom told me to never mention you again. So I didn't. I followed the rules. I thought it would protect me." She said she started using CareMap during her residency rotations and it changed the way she saw patients. That dashboard saved my team 4 hours a week. I didn't even know it was you at first. But when I found out, I felt both proud and ashamed. And then this line stopped me cold. "You were right to walk away. I hope one day I can do the same." I stared at the screen for a long time. Because that was the real twist, wasn't it? Alicia, perfect, polished, poster child Alicia, wasn't free. She was still performing. Still living the role assigned to her. And deep down, still afraid. I walked the Boston Harbor that afternoon with earbuds in, my mind drifting to the moments no one ever saw. Crying in public libraries when my code wouldn't compile. Burning rice 3 nights in a row in a tiny basement apartment. Getting laughed at in a funding pitch because I wore second-hand heels. Falling asleep on a bus and waking up 3 stops too late. Going to sleep hungry and waking up more determined than ever. My family never knew those stories. Because they never asked. And I never offered. To them, I was the disappointment who refused med school. To the world, I was now the woman who'd helped digitize over 300 clinics. But in between, I was just a girl trying not to disappear. That night, I received a message on LinkedIn. From Charles Hendricks. Subject: Thank you. It read, I know we barely spoke, but I wanted to say something your family never did. Thank you. For Alicia. For the hospital. For being bold when they weren't. I hope someday I can earn the same courage. I reread it twice. Then closed the app. The messages weren't revenge. They were echoes. Whispers from the past that were only now starting to reach me. 3 days later, I prepared to fly back to Seattle. As I zipped my suitcase, my hotel phone rang. Ms. Winters? The concierge said. A package arrived for you. Hand-delivered. No return name. I hesitated. Send it up, please. Inside the package was a leather-bound folder. No note. No card. Just documents. Legal ones. I flipped through them slowly. A 33% board ownership transfer offer from Blake Foundation Hospital. They were offering me a seat. On the board. Of the hospital that disowned me. It wasn't charity. It wasn't sentiment. It was business. They'd seen what CareMap did. They wanted deeper integration. And maybe, just maybe, they realized they needed new blood. New vision. New leadership. Me. I didn't smile. I didn't weep. I just sat there, holding the papers, thinking. This is the apology they'll never say out loud. I met Alicia for coffee before I left. She wore flats instead of heels. Her hair in a bun. No makeup. I told Mom to send the offer, she said. Not as a favor. As a correction. I nodded. She'll never admit she was wrong, Alicia added. She doesn't have to, I said. She already knows. Alicia sipped her tea, then said something that would stay with me forever. You don't have to take the seat. You've already earned your place. I looked at her. Really looked. And saw a woman still wearing a shell she didn't build. I reached across the table and held her hand. I won't take the seat, I said. But I'll consult. On my terms. Quarterly. Remote. She smiled. That's fair. Then she whispered. Come home more. I didn't answer. Because home wasn't a place anymore. It was me. On the flight back, I opened my journal and scribbled 5 words. Don't wait for their apology. That was the real victory. Not the company. Not the license deal. Not the gasps at the wedding. But the moment I realized. I never needed them to say sorry. Because I stopped living for their approval a long time ago. And I wasn't going back. 2 weeks after I returned to Seattle, the board at Blake Foundation Hospital sent another offer. This time, it wasn't for a seat. It was for a merger. They wanted to absorb part of CareMap's infrastructure. White label it under the Blake name, with an equity exchange that would allow them to brand the innovation as their own. The audacity. The same family that called me a failure now wanted to wear my legacy like a scarf. I stared at the proposal in my office, tapping my pen against the glass desk. Do they think I'm desperate for a reunion? I muttered aloud. Marley, now my chief of operations and still my best friend, raised her eyebrows from across the room. No. They think you're still trying to impress them. I smiled. Then they don't know who I am anymore. But Marley was right. This wasn't a business pitch. It was a manipulation wrapped in polish. And I had no intention of playing along. That Friday, Alicia texted me. Mom wants to host a family dinner. Just us. No agenda. Just a talk. I stared at the message for a long time. No agenda? Highly unlikely. But I agreed to attend. Not because I needed anything from them. But because I wanted them to see the woman they tried to erase, at their own table. Dinner was at the estate, of course. Formal. Gold-rimmed dishes. A chandelier that cost more than my first round of seed funding. I wore a navy jumpsuit with a white blazer. Sharp, but soft. No flash. No logos. Just presents. When I arrived, my mother opened the door herself. She stared at me like I was an apparition. Alexandra, she said stiffly. You look different. I smiled. Thank you. We didn't hug. Alicia emerged from the hallway and kissed my cheek. My father lingered near the dining table, pretending to adjust the silverware. Old habits. Dinner began awkwardly. Small talk. Comments about hospital budgets and wedding thank you notes. Then the elephant entered the room. "So," my mother said, slicing her salmon delicately, "I assume you've reviewed the merger proposal." There it was. I looked up, unblinking. I did. And I took a sip of water. I won't be merging CareMap into the Blake system. But I will continue to license the software to you. Quarterly renewal. No branding. No equity exchange. My father cleared his throat. You realize this could help elevate the family name again. After the press leak. The name doesn't interest me, I said calmly. Impact does. My company was built to help patients, not polish reputations. Silence. My mother bristled. You always were too idealistic. It's why you ran away. I laughed. No. I ran away because I was disowned. Big difference. Alicia flinched slightly. My father looked down. I didn't come tonight to argue, I added. I came to draw a line. My mother narrowed her eyes. A line. Yes, I said, folding my napkin slowly. Between who I was and who I am. Between obligation and choice. Between family and legacy. You're still a Blake, whether you admit it or not, she hissed. No, I said, standing. I'm not. I reached into my bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. My name printed across the front. Alexandra Bennett. I placed it gently beside her plate. Inside was a letter of formal notice. All future dealings with Blake Foundation Hospital would go through my legal team. No direct communications permitted. A clean professional boundary. I built something good, I said. And I won't let it be reshaped by the people who taught me shame before they taught me love. Then I looked at Alicia. You have my number. If you ever want to talk, sister to sister, I'll always answer. And I walked out. I didn't cry in the car this time either. But I did replay the entire dinner in my head like a courtroom cross-examination. I had expected anger. But what I saw in my mother's eyes as I left wasn't fury. It was fear. Fear that the narrative she'd clung to, that I was the weak one, the broken one, the lost cause, had been shattered beyond repair. Because I wasn't broken. I was thriving. And I wasn't just her daughter anymore. I was a woman with boundaries. With power. With peace. The fallout came fast. An email from the board requesting a renegotiation. Declined. A follow-up from my father suggesting a private discussion. Ignored. Even a voicemail from my mother, tight-voiced and trembling, saying, I never thought you'd be so cruel. To your own blood. But it wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to be let in. I was deciding who got to stay out. 3 months later, I was invited to speak at a global health tech summit in Zurich. The topic? Empathy-driven innovation in systems that forgot the human. I stood on a stage under bright lights, facing a crowd of CEOs, doctors, engineers, and founders. And I told them this. I wasn't driven by revenge. I was driven by silence. By the gap between what I knew I could offer, and what I was told I couldn't become. My journey wasn't built on proving anyone wrong. It was built on trusting that I was already enough. The applause didn't matter. The after-party didn't matter. What mattered was the girl I used to be. Sitting on a library floor at 19, broke, alone, and sobbing into a hoodie sleeve because she didn't know what came next. She would have never believed this life. But she built it anyway. I flew back home and stopped by my old neighborhood on a whim. The Blake estate loomed behind the wrought iron gates, unchanged. But something in me had shifted so completely that it no longer looked like a castle. It looked like a tomb. A place I once thought I had to conquer, when in reality, I had already outgrown it. That evening, I threw a dinner of my own. At my Seattle apartment. Warm. Filled with laughter. Marley was there. My team. A few new friends who didn't know the old story. Only the current one. We drank wine. Ate too much pasta. Played trivia games and laughed about inside jokes. No pretense. No pressure. Just love. And I realized something. This was the family I chose. And they chose me back. Later that night, as I curled under a blanket on my sofa, I pulled out the envelope my mother had once mailed me after the wedding. I hadn't opened it until now. Inside was a photo of me at age 18, wearing my wrinkled graduation gown, standing on the sidewalk with a packed suitcase and eyes swollen from crying. On the back, she'd written in careful script, "You always had more fire than we knew what to do with." No apology. Just a crack. A tiny crack in the fortress of blame. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt peace. Because I had become the woman they never believed in. And I did it without their permission. The funny thing about becoming successful without your family? They eventually pretend they always knew you would be. By the start of the new quarter, my company CareMap had closed deals with 3 of the biggest private healthcare systems on the West Coast. We were onboarding over 70 new clinics. Our AI-driven modules were now helping hospitals reduce ER wait times by up to 60% and patient misrouting by 40%. Our funding was stable. Our vision was intact. And my name was suddenly, magically, appearing in publications the Blake family actually read. The Alexandra Effect. How one disowned CEO revolutionized healthcare digitization. Meet the woman behind CareMap's patient-centered algorithm. And my personal favorite? Boston's most regretted exile. Blake family's disowned daughter, now an industry giant. No one from my family responded publicly. But I know they read it. Because 3 days later, I received an embossed letter from Blake Foundation's executive committee inviting me to speak at the Centennial Gala. It was the 100th anniversary of the hospital's founding. A big black tie affair. Politicians, donors, board members, press. They wanted me to represent the next generation of innovation within legacy systems. The irony? They hadn't even acknowledged me as family for nearly a decade. And now they wanted to showcase me. Like a trophy. Like redemption by association. I sat in my Seattle office, holding the invitation, and laughing under my breath. Marley walked in. "What's so funny?" I handed her the letter. She skimmed it quickly, then looked at me. "You going?" "I don't know yet," I said. "Feels strategic." "Of course it is," she replied. "But so what? Maybe it's time they hear the story from the one who lived it." 2 weeks later, I flew back to Boston again. I didn't go to the estate. I didn't text Alicia. I didn't prep a speech. I simply stepped into the ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton in a tailored ivory gown with a side slit and minimal jewelry. Elegant. Disarming. Unforgettable. As I entered, heads turned. I saw people I hadn't seen in years. Former neighbors, my father's boardroom cronies, my mother's sorority sisters. They all gave me the same look. Not shock. Not anger. But calculated interest. The kind you reserve for someone who might be useful again. The host approached me with a practiced grin. "Alexandra Bennett. What a gift to have you. You look radiant." "Thank you," I said. "Glad to be here." "Your segment's at 8:45. Right after the awards presentation." "No problem." I mingled for 15 minutes. Listened to speeches about legacy, progress, the future of healthcare. Then the spotlight hit the stage. "And now," the MC said, "we invite a woman whose journey from outsider to industry leader exemplifies the resilience and brilliance of the next century of medicine. Please welcome Alexandra Bennett." Applause. Polite. Reserved. Curious. I walked up slowly. Adjusted the mic, took a breath. And then I said, "When I was 18, my family told me I was a defect. That my refusal to become a doctor made me a disgrace to the Blake name. So I left. No plan. No degree. Just an instinct. Dead silence. Eyes widened. Lips parted. I let it settle. That instinct became CareMap, a platform now helping over 200,000 patients across the country. Ironically, including the hospital that once asked me to never return. A few gasps. One cough. My mother, in the front row, went absolutely still. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about remembering who you are when everyone else forgets. It's about listening to your own voice when even your blood tries to mute it. Someone in the back stood to clap. Then another. Then the room erupted. Standing ovation. But I didn't smile. I just looked directly at my parents. And in that 1 second they knew. This wasn't a reunion. This was a reckoning. After the event, my mother approached me. She held a glass of wine with trembling fingers. "You embarrassed us," she said. "No," I replied calmly. "You embarrassed yourselves. I just told the truth. You've changed." "No," I said again. "I just became someone you can't control." She opened her mouth, then closed it, and walked away. That was the last time I saw her. Alicia called 2 days later. "I heard about your speech," she said softly. "You weren't there." "I was in the hallway. Couldn't face it." "Why?" "Because I let them do it to you. And because I'm scared they'll do it to me." I paused. "You know they will, right?" "I do now." Then her voice cracked. "I've been offered a research post in San Francisco. I want to take it. But Mom said if I move out there, I'm on my own." I smiled gently. "Then come. You'll never be alone." Alicia moved west that fall. She didn't take the post right away. She took a sabbatical. Started journaling. Volunteered at a free clinic. She said for the first time, she was living for herself. We had dinner once a week. She told me stories of growing up, things I didn't even know. How our mother used to pin photos of Ivy League campuses on our bedroom walls. How she cried in closets when she got B+. How she thought being perfect was the only way to be loved. We healed together. Not because we were rebuilding the past, but because we were building something better. Something real. 3 months later, I found a letter slipped under my office door. No envelope. Just one sheet of paper. Typed. It read, "I used to think legacy was about name, blood, institutions. But you've shown me it's about impact, purpose, change. I won't ask for forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve it. But I hope one day, you'll let me say thank you, in person." No signature. But I didn't need one. It was from my father. I never wrote back. Because some doors don't need reopening. Not out of hate. But because we've walked too far beyond them. And the sun outside is too warm to go back into the cold. Today, CareMap is preparing for global rollout. Our new pilot in Nairobi launches this spring. We're translating modules into Swahili and Urdu. We're hiring local engineers. Training young women in coding. Because legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you create. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't returning home. It's making the whole world your home instead. It started with a white envelope, thick and formal. Hand-delivered to my office. I recognized the font immediately. Curved, pretentious, the kind of calligraphy that screamed Blake family event. Inside was a wedding invitation. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Emily Blake to Jonathan Green." Emily. My youngest cousin. The last of the Boston Blakes still untouched by scandal or scandalous ambition. She had stayed in the system, smiled in the photos, married the right man. The ceremony would be held at the Blake family estate, the same place they had once told me never to return. The same stone walls, same manicured lawns, same legacy-laden air. I hadn't seen Emily in years. But I wasn't surprised she invited me. She was different. She had sent me a private message after my speech at the Centennial Gala. "I'm sorry for what they did. I wish I had spoken up sooner." Still, the invitation didn't feel like a peace offering. It felt like a test. Marley spun in her chair when I showed her. "You're going, right?" "I haven't decided." "You have to. They've spent years painting you as the family's biggest failure. Now you're more successful than all of them put together. Show up. Eat the cake. Be a queen." I laughed. "That's not the point." She smirked. "Maybe not. But you've earned the right to decide what the point is." I RSVP'd yes. And then I forgot about it. Until the night before the wedding, when Alicia texted. "Just a heads up. Mom's furious that Emily invited you." She said, "Why would she bring that girl into such a sacred event?" That girl. 9 years later and I was still that girl. It didn't sting anymore. Not really. It was just tired. The same script. Same insults. Same refusal to admit that the family's defect had outgrown the box they tried to bury her in. Still, I didn't go to the wedding for validation. I went for Emily. And for the little part of me that once stood outside that same estate, holding a wrinkled diploma and a broken heart. The day of the wedding, I wore a floor-length emerald green dress with a low back and minimal accessories. Timeless. Elegant. Non-threatening. But impossible to ignore. I arrived 20 minutes early. Walked through the same iron gates. Saw the same hydrangeas, same stone path, same marble columns. Everything was the same except me. This time, I wasn't trembling. I wasn't hoping to be seen. I was the standard now. And they knew it. The whispers began before I made it halfway to my seat. Is that Alexandra? She looks incredible. I thought she was living in Europe? No, she runs some tech thing now. Big money. I smiled politely. Sat down. Alicia joined me minutes later in a dusty rose slip dress. You ready? She whispered. For what? She grinned. Whatever they throw. The ceremony was stunning. Emily looked radiant. Jonathan was beaming. And for a moment, it felt like I wasn't in the middle of a legacy I never chose, but just a woman watching two people begin something new. After the vows, guests flooded the garden for cocktails. That's when I saw her. My mother. Dressed in navy blue, hair pinned high, lips pressed tight. She saw me. And froze. She made no move to greet me. No nod. No blink. Just stared like she was seeing a ghost that refused to die. I gave her nothing. Not anger. Not kindness. Just calm. And I turned away. During dinner, I was seated next to a venture capitalist from Boston General. He leaned over mid-course. So you're the infamous Bennett? I smiled. I've been called worse. He laughed. You gave that gala speech last year, right? About identity and legacy. That's me. Powerful stuff. Changed how I mentor my own daughter. I nodded politely. That's the only legacy I care about. From 3 tables away, I felt my father watching. Not with pride. With panic. Because he could no longer explain me away. Not as a dropout. Not as a disgrace. Not as a ghost. I was real now. Tangible. And the room knew it. Later that night, Emily found me near the dessert bar. You came, she said, pulling me into a hug. Thank you. I wouldn't miss it. She stepped back. Did she say anything to you? Your aunt? I asked. She nodded. No. But that's okay. Emily exhaled. She told me this morning that you were a distraction. That inviting you was a risk. And you did it anyway? I wanted to remind her that family doesn't mean control. It means connection. I smiled. That's brave. She looked at me seriously. No. You're brave. I'm just catching up. As the night wound down, Alicia and I stood by the fountain. The same one where, as kids, we used to toss in coins and wish for different futures. She turned to me. You ever think we'd get here? Honestly? No. You know what I think, she said. I think you're the one thing in this family they couldn't manipulate, so they tried to erase you. And now? I asked. She sipped her wine. Now they need you to validate their story again. I let that sit. Because it was true. Just before I left, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned. It was my mother. Her expression unreadable. Can we talk? She asked. I paused. Then nodded. We walked 5 paces to the edge of the garden, away from the crowd. She took a breath. Then, almost too softly to hear. I underestimated you. I said nothing. I thought you'd come back bitter. Loud. Ugly. I raised an eyebrow. You thought I'd match the narrative. She looked away. I don't have the language for this. You don't need language, I said. You need honesty. She met my eyes. I don't know how to be your mother anymore. You don't have to be. She blinked. I've already raised myself. I turned. Started walking. Then stopped. Without looking back, I said. But thank you for the fire. And I left her standing there. Not broken. Just obsolete. The next day, Emily sent me a photo. It was from the wedding. A candid. Me, Alicia, and Emily laughing under the string lights. She captioned it. The women who survived the name. I saved it. Framed it. hung it above my desk. Because no matter where I go from here, that moment, the laughter, the light, the knowing, that's the family I claim. Not the one written in blood, but the one forged in truth. They say some stories end with a bang. Mine ended with peace. And in my world, that was louder than anything else. After the wedding, I didn't return to Boston again. Not for holidays. Not for business. Not even when the Blake Foundation launched their new wing and tried to name it after generational contributors to modern healthcare. I declined. Quietly. Politely. I didn't need my name carved in marble. It was already etched in people. A few months later, Alicia came over one Sunday morning with 2 coffees and a folder under her arm. "I need your help," she said. "With." She opened the folder. Inside were blueprints. Hand-drawn outlines. A proposal she had been sketching for 6 months. "I want to start my own clinic," she said. I blinked. "Wait, what?" "A trauma-informed practice. For women. Affordable. But elegant. Discreet. And not under anyone's thumb." I smiled. "Are you finally defecting from the dynasty?" She laughed. "No. I'm starting my own." She wanted CareMap to power the systems. Wanted me on her board, not because of family, but because of faith. We launched the project 6 months later in a renovated row building in San Francisco's Mission District. White walls, gold finishes, soft lighting. We called it Haven. And in its first year, it served over 3,000 women. Alicia said, "This is what healing looks like." And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't talking about patients. Meanwhile, CareMap expanded to Canada, Germany, and Kenya. We hired multilingual UX designers. We translated every form into 12 languages. We embedded trauma prompts. We introduced AI translators that could read tone and detect emotional urgency, even if the patient couldn't find the words. It wasn't flashy. It was just better. One night after a presentation in Berlin, I received a message from a stranger. I walked into a clinic scared out of my mind. I left feeling heard. "Your platform saved my dignity. Thank you." I screenshotted it. Not to brag, but to remember. Remember that the thing they once called my failure had become someone else's safe place. Every now and then, my father would send a holiday card. No notes. No phone numbers. Just the card. A picture of a tree. A season's greetings. Nothing more. It didn't upset me. It didn't move me either. It just reminded me that even those who don't know how to love well sometimes try anyway. And I've learned not to measure love by the tools it uses, only by whether it helps you grow or shrink. One spring evening, Marley and I sat on my balcony watching the sun go down over the water. She was drinking wine. I was drinking tea. We hadn't talked about the Blake family in months. "You ever feel tempted to go back?" she asked. "To Boston? To the past?" I shook my head. "No. The girl who wanted them to see her is gone." "And the woman you are now?" She only looks forward. She nodded. "Good. Because you're not just a success story. You're a system shift." I laughed. "That sounds like something you'd put in a TED Talk." "It is," she said. "And I'm writing it for you." That fall, I was invited to give the keynote at a Global Tech Humanities Summit in Singapore. Topic: When the system erases you, rewrite the code. And I told them everything. Not just the numbers, but the name-calling, the exile, the empty bank account, the rejection letters. The night spent wondering if I really was the failure they said I was. Then I told them about CareMap, and Haven, and Alicia, and Marley, and the little girl I used to be who stood in front of a locked door, holding nothing but a suitcase and a stubborn little spark. That spark became an empire. Not one of money, but of meaning. After the summit, I went back to my hotel room, took off the heels, wiped off the makeup, sat in front of the window and watched the lights flicker across the skyline. And I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I had finally learned that healing isn't loud. It's quiet. It's moments like these. Still. Soft. Sacred. Where you no longer need to be seen. Because you see yourself. A few months later, I opened my front door to find a small box on the ground. No label. No stamp. Just a gold ribbon. Inside was a single bracelet. Simple. Silver. Engraved with one word. Enough. No note. But I had a feeling it was from Alicia. Or maybe Marley. Or maybe even the version of me who first said it and meant it. I wear it every day now. Not as a reminder of who hurt me, but as a declaration of who I became. So to anyone out there who's been cast out, belittled, erased, or told you weren't enough, don't waste your time proving them wrong. Spend your energy becoming exactly who you were always meant to be. And when they finally look up, you won't need to say a word. Because your life will speak for you. The end. Thank you so much for watching and supporting our channel. If Alexandra's story moved you, drop a comment below and share your favorite moment. And if you haven't already, subscribe to catch more true, powerful stories like this one. Until next time, remember, living well isn't just revenge, it's freedom.